Picture a winter night on the edge of a small town roofs wearing soft caps of snow. The street outside glazed in blue and silver like a river that froze mid-sentence. You draw the curtains. The room hushes. A kettle clicks off steam ghosts the lamplight, and you set a warm mug beside the bed as if docking a tiny moon. Somewhere down the block, a dog gives one bark and then thinks better of it. The world invites quiet and then offers a cheeky reminder from the imaginations, without fire shelter and a story to keep you still. You probably won't survive this. Luckily tonight, you get all three. We build little night rituals because darkness is bigger than us, and stories let that bigness be beautiful instead of scary. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're listening from and what your local time is. I love seeing this campfire glow across the map. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You settle into the bedding as if into a small boat, and the first whisper floats across the dark. Someone clears a throat. A lamp turns down, a sentence begins. That's the doorway. Bedtime doesn't arrive like a clock. It arrives like a custom, a signal that the household agrees to lay down its armor at the same time. Stories are that signal shrinking the wilderness of thoughts into a single path you can walk without bumping into tomorrow's to-do list. Night asks for stillness and trust, a tall order for a creature wired to scan for rustles. So, humans invented an elegant compromise: sit still, but listen. The tail tethers attention while muscles power down, the way a campfire lets everyone stop moving, yet continue sharing heat. Joke 1: your pillow is auditioning for the role of small comfy cloud, and you, the casting director, are notoriously easy to impress after 10 p.m. A mainstream fact warms the room. In many towns, the curfew bell couvre-feu cover. The fire rang each evening to remind households to bank embers under ash so the home wouldn't ignite overnight. It wasn't a scold to sleep. It was maintenance for domesticated lightning. And before bright nights existed, many kept first and second sleep, waking after midnight to talk, pray, or stir the coals, then drifting back prime territory for stories. Now, a quirky tidbit rustles the bedclothes in parts of early modern Europe. Families slipped open iron scissors beneath a pillow to cut bad dreams. Others drew salt lines at thresholds because monsters, it's said, have terrible sodium tolerance. Whether the iron edits dreams or not, the props tell your brain that order stands watch while you surrender. Joke 2. If your snack drawer starts a petition for midnight rites, you will not be reviewing it until morning hours. Listen to the way a voice reshapes the room. It matches the body's night switch, longer exhalations, softer consonants, paragraphs stepping down like stairs into a pool. Anxiety loves unfinished puzzles. Stories love closure. Even a cliffhanger at night isn't a cliff. It's a gently fenced overlook with a bench and a view. The winter frame matters. Cold sharpens edges darkness, stretches minutes, and communities once gathered at the warmest circle because that's where survival lived. Your modern circle is a pool of lamplight or a rectangle that glows like a cautious ember, but the instinct is the same. Historians still argue whether biphasic sleep was truly universal or mostly a European pattern recorded by particular sources, yet the stretch between sleeps becomes storytime either way. Notice what ritual does to vigilance. Daytime attention widens to catch traffic messages and that one raven with a side hustle in shiny things. Nighttime attention narrows on purpose. One path, one lantern, one companion. Sometimes a fox, sometimes a friend, sometimes your older self guiding you through a memory. With the path simplified, the mind's backstage crew begins quiet tasks, sorting scenes, filing useful lines, sweeping glitter from the emotional floor. The choreography helps. Even in a studio apartment, bedtime is a ceremony devices docked lights, stepped down the last sip of water. The soft announcement. Ready a whisper answers. Once upon a time, you don't pretend the night holds nothing. You agree not to patrol every corner. Story becomes the perimeter. Joke 3. You are 3 sentences away from drooling artistically on your forearm. Try the opposite, and you feel the necessity. Climb into bed after doom scrolling, and your eyebrows grip the day like a cat refusing to exit a suitcase. The body delays surrender because the mind hasn't been walked home. But let a trusted voice hold a lantern grandmother's folktale, an uncle's benchside saga, a friendly host in your headphones, and the hinge turns. The first whisper is both ordinary and enormous. It marks the switch from battlefield to hearth vigilance to trust. That's why bedtime stories feel necessary. They are the operating instructions for being safely offline. They tell your nervous system. The watch is passed to locks, latches, neighbors, and the quiet machinery of night. They build a tiny, reliable bridge from the bright mainland of day to the island where your cells rebuild the village. The content doesn't need grandeur. A child and a candle, a ship and a shore, a winter fox stepping neat prints across new snow. Simple shapes let your brain relax into pattern. Think of it as embroidery, each sentence a stitch, each breath a knot, the fabric forming beneath your eyelids until it can carry your weight. The ending leaves a porch light on for tomorrow's you. Underneath all this, the hearth still glows, even if the hearth is a lamp or a phone tamed to night mode. People built tools to make darkness livable, bed canopies to soften drafts, heavy curtains to negotiate with the moon, and songs whose vowels loosen jaw and chest together. The pieces survive because they work. Ritual is the manual you can follow when your hands are too tired to hold the map. And every manual reads better when someone murmurs, "Once on a night like this." The snow outside keeps its quiet conversation with the roofs. Inside, the last lamp sighs to a lower setting. You tuck the quilt as if tucking in the day itself. A chapter ends not with a crash, but with a soft light at the window of the mind. And you, carried by the first whisper, travel without moving right on schedule. You lean closer to the embers, just as people have leaned for a very, very long time, the way you banked last night's light, under ash, like a tiny moon going to sleep. The glow redraws faces into masks of warm bronze and shadow. Eyes catch and release sparks. Hands punctuate speech. The circle edits the world down to what matters. Out there is the night. In here is the story. You huddle with a small band in the late Stone Age, and the first line of the tale does its old magic, keeping everyone still enough to heal and calm enough to learn. A stray ember pops tiny meteor, excellent audition, no orbital clearance, and lands harmlessly on bare dirt. Joke 1 somewhere in your DNA, there's a line item that reads, "Meeting length, until logs become opinions." What does the circle buy you? You time. Firelight stretches the evening beyond sunset, giving your group a bonus hour or 4 when predators keep their distance cooking. Sweetens roots and meat into safer calories, and minds can travel farther than feet. A mainstream fact glows here. One well-known field study among Kalahari foragers observed that daytime talk focuses on practical matters. Who went where, who will fetch water, which track belongs to which antelope. While nighttime talk around the fire turns to stories, myths, and social ties, the very braid that holds a small community together till morning. Day teaches hands, night teaches hearts. You watch teaching happen without anyone saying, "Class is in session." An elder lifts a napping flake to the light, so edges glint like crescent moons. A teen repeats the motion, learning the wrist's quiet grammar. Someone tells about the marsh by the red hill, where the ground looks like soup. The younger ones memorize the image and the warning. A grandmother performs the hyena's laugh. No gore, this is PG-13. Just a sharp music that makes the group tighten its sleeping ring by a hand's width. The tale ends with a line about leaving embers covered at dawn, so the wind won't adopt your hearth callback to your old curfew bell. Only this time, the bell is a human voice. You probably won't survive. This is still true if you wander out alone in the dark, which is exactly why cautionary creatures live at the door of these stories. Not to gore you, just to keep you from investigating that fascinating rustle behind the acacia. After dusk, narrative becomes a soft fence. Children learn where the safe shadow ends and the foolish shadow begins. Joke 2, your curiosity is a puppy. The story is the leash the village agrees to share. Under the warm spectrum of firelight, your body shifts into night mode. No blue glare, no sharp angles, just amber wavelengths that let melatonin keep its evening appointment. Breath slows. The voice telling the story matches that rhythm sentences, lengthening consonants, rounding off like waves at low tide. The tale's pace tucks the nervous system the way a cloak tucks shoulders. You can feel it? Your eyelids begin writing cursive on their own. It's not all hush and hush. Firelight is theater. Hands throw antelope across the dirt with the flick of a wrist. A shadow coyote steps along the skin of the shelter and vanishes. Laughter lifts, returns, lands. The teller switches voices, the naive hunter, the clever auntie, the moon. With opinions and theory of mind, gets a gym membership. You practice entering someone else's skull and walking around in the furniture. That's survival, because tomorrow you'll negotiate a water hole with neighbors who also like not dying. Archaeologists sweep their lights through caves and find crumbs of these evenings. There are hearths with layers like tree rings. Burn ash, rest, repeat at places where people returned again and again to do exactly what you're doing now. Evidence of habitual fire use grows denser around the mid-Pleistocene. Charred bone, reddened earth, heat, altered stone all point to knowledge kept and taught. Historians still argue whether campfire storytelling accelerated the evolution of language or merely rode alongside it, once tongues and throats had the right equipment. But even the debate concedes a simple truth. A good tale can make a cold night short. Quirky tidbit time among the Yupik of Alaska girls once used story knives, slender bone, or metal blades to draw scenes in snow or dirt while narrating the earth itself, becoming a page that melts clean at sunrise. No illustrator subscription needed. Version control handled by the weather. The instinct pairing pictures with words under the eye of a flame or the pale glimmer of snow matches what you're watching now, language borrowing hands. So memory has something to grip. Coordination isn't just who goes where tomorrow. It's the choreography of belonging. Around the hearth, jokes and nicknames attached to episodes, so when someone says, "Don't pull a left foot river," everyone snorts and remembers the time a cousin stepped shin deep into the red ooze marsh the elder warned about. Humor is glue. So are rhythm and chorus chanted lines at the end of a scary bit, the group speaking together to shoo it back into the dark. The story becomes a user manual for a fragile coalition of apes with ambitions. Food arrives as subplot. Tubers roast in the ash like secret treasure chests. Fat crackles. Someone flips a locust on a hot stone with the same flourish, used for a plot twist. Cooking softens not only fibers, but arguments. With more digestible calories, bodies thrive, brains stay online, and the group gets surplus attention to spend on worlds. Joke 3, no marshmallows yet, but the first person to drip roast honey on a stick is absolutely the head of R&D. Listen to the curriculum unroll. Stars become memory pegs. This one rises when the fish run, that one points home if you're lost near the stony hill. A nearby boulder is a sleeping giant in the story, and also a landmark you cannot miss in fog. A path is a path, and also the story of the aunt who sang it first. If you can remember the song, you can remember the turns. You've just invented navigation you can carry in your head. In this way, the night class handles the course catalog, meteorology, zoology, geography, ethics, and conflict resolution, all with better snacks. The circle also edits the social ledger. Grievances become fables, with the serial numbers filed off. Praise becomes parable. A reckless cousin hears about a young hunter with excellent calves, who nevertheless forgot to check the wind and nods with the diplomatically neutral expression of someone catching a mirror. The form keeps dignity while delivering the message. Tomorrow morning's hunt will be safer because tonight's story made the idea stick without making the person bleed pride. If you could fly out from this hearth and look down at 100 others across a continent and 100 millennia, you'd see the same geometry faces arranged to catch light, a shared loaf of time and plots that turn danger into meaning. Archaeologists still debate the exact timeline whether hominins mastered fire 1 million years ago in one cave or habitually only by 400,000 across many camps. The evidence flickers and flares like wildfire, but nobody doubts that once we held flame reliably, evenings changed, and with them, us. The tale at your circle ends with laughter soft enough not to spook the night. Someone tosses a handful of ash over the brightest coal. Someone else mimes the hyena again badly on purpose. The children protest and then yawn in the same breath. Above constellations take attendance. You lie back on your rolled cloak and listen to the fade, the crackle stepping down a stair at a time, the last voice saying, "Tomorrow we'll go early." The group humming the agreement you can feel in your bones. In a minute, sleep will claim the camp by rows like crops under moonlight, and the story will keep watch till the next ember wakes. Your breath meets the voice and decides to walk together step for step, like two friends pacing a quiet block after snow. Inhale sentence, exhale period. The fan gives a soft hum. Remember, we invited it back in the opening, and your pulse taps a slower metronome under the covers. This is the body's night switch clicking, while the story holds the light. You feel a gentle fall in core temperature, the room a shade cooler than the day, and your eyelids begin writing long cursive across the dark. Inside your skull, a speck-sized foreman with a clipboard, the suprachiasmatic nucleus modest and a little bossy behind the eyes, keeps time for the whole neighborhood of you. It watches brightness, tells the pineal gland when to send melatonin out with a tiny lantern, and nudges cortisol to prep the morning coffee without asking. The shape of a bedtime story cooperates with this chemistry. Cadence lengthens, volume lowers, suspense melts into reassurance, and the parasympathetic system takes the mic. Joke 1, your sympathetic nervous system clocks out like a barista who just heard the word decaf at closing time. Mainstream fact tucked like a hot water bottle at your feet. In 1729, the French scientist Jean-Jacques Dortus de Meyran watched mimosa leaves open and close on schedule. Even in constant darkness, a botanical drumline proving that life carries clocks inside. Much later, researchers mapped clock genes that keep tissues on schedule, explaining why a sunrise jogger and a midnight coder can belong to the same species. Your story doesn't edit DNA, but it negotiates with the clock. You've got guiding you into the slow lane where sleep merges cleanly. You notice how narrative shapes breathing. A good teller gives room to exhale. A patient pause invites a longer, slower outbreath that tells the heart to loosen its tie. Heart rate dips, muscles uncrumple, the brow gives up its lease on the day. If the sentences come like waves, arrive stretch, withdraw your rib cage, follow suit. That's not mysticism. That's baroreceptors sending pleasant memos to the vagus nerve. When you chuckle at a gentle line, the tiny jig of laughter replenishes air like cracking a window. For 1 second, fresh oxygen for the drift. Now the lights, the amber flicker of a fire or its modern well-behaved cousins, lets melatonin keep rising like a tide. Blue glare barges in like a noon security guard and tells your foreman to keep the office open. So you dim screens, shade lamps, and draw curtains against a moon that sometimes overshares. A room too warm argues with the temperature. Drop your clock expects. A cooler room agrees. The story acts like a pacer, keeping you from sprinting back into emails while steering you toward the drifting lane where the mind leaves shore, quirky tidbits sliding under your pillow. People once stuffed hop pillows with dried hops from the brewer's yard, trusting soft bitterness to usher them off. Others sewed sprigs of lavender into sachets or tucked thin apple slices between sheets so dreams would smell like orchards. We're not prescribing your bedding as a charcuterie board. We're noting the long human hobby of coaxing the night with scent. If you've already kept scissors to snip nightmares or salt to fence, the door fragrance is simply another calm sentry on the night shift. Your ears play along. Soft consonants, fewer plosives, vowels that glide the voice becomes lamplight through wool. Prosody. The rise and fall of speech gives your nervous system a map with no cliff edges, even a simple refrain. And the night keeps its watch, lets prediction do the heavy lifting, so vigilance can retire early. Historians still argue whether medieval curfew bells mainly protected timber towns from fire, or also served as a civic bedtime to quiet the streets. But either way, the bell and the bedtime story are cousins. Both lower the town's shoulders by degrees. The timing of a tale also cooperates with memory. Your hippocampus backstage librarian works a night shift, reshelving the day and underlining what to keep. Drift in at the right pace, and you grant the librarian access without camping at the desk. Bits of the tale may reappear as dream echoes, not plagiarism collaboration. Tomorrow, you might wake with a line polished by sleep, or an answer to a knot you stopped yanking. That's the sleepy miracle of consolidation. The mind rehearses the world while the body mends the stage. Try the opposite, and you see why the switch matters. Scroll bright headlines, binge jump cuts, and your heart does cardio while your brain takes minutes. You flip the pillow to the cold side. The cold side files for overtime. Joke 2. Your thumbs think they're training for the Olympics, but the event they're winning is insomnia. Morning arrives with receipts. Land in cadence breath sentence blink, and the trapdoor opens politely instead. A small historical thread stitches body to calendar monastic schedules, once divided night with canonical hours, islands of chant and hush that trained communities to treat darkness like a friend. Whether you're a singer in stone or a hummer under blankets rhythm, does similar work scaffolding the drift. Historians still argue whether the rise of street lighting shifted sleep more by safety or by nightlife, but the body kept voting for rhythm and rhythm kept winning. As the tale moves, your jaw loosens so words can land. Shoulders drop a vertebra at a time. Hands release the ghost tools of the day, spatula, steering wheel, keyboard. The heroic bag of groceries you swore you'd carry in one trip. Gravity Bossy at noon becomes an ally that pulls thought into slower water. The little foreman checks boxes, melatonin up, heart rate down, temperature. Lower eyelids, heavy attention happily tethered to a single kindly thing. Joke 3. Your mattress says it's memory foam, but tonight you get to remember absolutely nothing. This is the practical romance of bedtime stories. They aren't spells, though they feel like it. They are pacers. They walk you to the frontier, where consciousness thins, point out the safe stepping stones, and keep you from sprinting back to check if you left the mental stove on. You still live in a house with locks and neighbors, and if you're lucky, that fan humming like a distant tide. Inside, the physiological city relaxes its guard. The bouncer nods you through. The dance floor empties without drama. The lights dim to amber that flatters everyone, even your thoughts. In the dark, the last line of the section stretches long, like a cat claiming the warmest square. You follow its softer breath after softer breath, and the night accepts the handoff biology ritual story, like three musicians sliding into the same key. The snow outside minds its business. In here, switches click off one by one, and the room keeps the promise the tale began. You sway without deciding to a gentle figure eight. Your hips learned before your mouth had words, and the voice in the room slips into sing-song, not a full melody, more a tide that keeps returning. This is lullaby country, the land of Mother Reese, that high, warm, exaggerated speech that turns language into a hammock and physics into mercy. Consonants soften, vowels stretch, phrases curl downward at the ends, as if laying their heads on your shoulder. Your breath sinks to the slow rise and fall. The vagus nerve, ever the diplomat, hears the long exhale and votes for peace. Joke 1, your singing voice, has only 2 settings: shower superstar and bedtime whisper, and the critic in the bassinet says the second is Grammy material. Sing-song isn't decoration, it's biomechanics. When you hum or croon, your larynx buzzes a little massage through your chest and face, the same neighborhoods your nervous system patrols for threat. Long phrases invite longer exhalations. Longer exhalations tell the heart to step out of its boots. Rocking adds vestibular kindness. Steady sways around once per second are an ancient message from the inner ear that we're being carried, not falling. Put the pieces together, voice, breath, sway, and your body writes a comfort chord in 3 notes. You've heard the tempo of lullabies your whole life, even if you don't know it somewhere around a resting pulse. Maybe 60 to 80 beats per minute meters, that Cradle 2 or the Little Waltz 3 of Brahms' Wiegenlied. Here's a mainstream historical fact, tucked like a ribbon into the crib. Johannes Brahms wrote that lullaby in 1868 as Wiegenlied. Guten Abend, Gut Nacht, and its 3/4 sway has rocked around the world ever since, in music boxes and mobiles. The notes behave like a rocking chair you can hear. If the fan hum from earlier is your white noise coastline lullaby, is the lantern you carry along that beach, infant-directed speech. The scientist's name for Mother Reese exaggerates pitch and rhythm, making syllables easier to segment. Babies lean toward it. So frankly do tired adults. The sing-song paints a big, friendly outline around meaning so the brain can relax while still feeling safely guided. Even the classic shh is a tiny windstorm that masks sudden noises, a DIY sound machine with a human warranty. Listen to vowels in different languages blur into the same cradle. Italian, nina nana, Arabic nini yamutza, French berceuse, Vietnamese ao o. The syllables go soft at the edges, like bread dipped in milk. Anthropologists catalog this across cultures. Some communities talk less directly to babies, focusing instead on surrounding them with the rhythm of speech and song shared by many voices. Historians still argue whether Mother Reese should be considered universal or a modern label stretched over diverse practices. But nobody misses the sway. Caregivers everywhere find a beat and make the night climb aboard. You smile remembering our earlier night gear. Iron scissors under the pillow, a white line of salt at the threshold. Hop and lavender pillows, like tiny herb gardens. And notice how lullabies fit the same category, small portable sentries. Where the scissors promise to cut bad dreams, song edits the room in real time. A phrase like "sleep little one" is both an instruction and a spell that calms the person saying it. Joke 2 by verse 3, you're no longer singing lyrics. You're reciting your grocery list to a lullaby melody, and the baby still approves because the rhythm is doing the babysitting. Because humans are humans, many lullabies smuggle in mischief. Spanish-speaking parents murmur, "Duérmete niño que viene el coco letting." The folkloric bogey peek around the door not to terrorize, just to nudge bedtime along. English hands have rocked cradles up in the treetop with breezes a little above OSHA standards. And everyone survived because the tree, like most lullaby geography, is metaphorical. A quirky tidbit from the footnotes: in some regions, caregivers tied cradles to ceiling beams, turning the whole house into a giant rocking rig with a tow rope. Multitasking was invented long before push notifications. Meanwhile, your physiology prints a receipt. Singing and gentle touch, add a drizzle of oxytocin file that thought for the bonds chapter later, while your long exhale keeps the vagal brake pressed. The child's heart rate shadows yours. Your breathing sets the tempo for the room. That's not romance. That's entrainment, a known party trick of living systems. Continue the sway long enough, and your own eyelids start to do that pleasant slow blink, which, as we've established, is exactly what the evening wants. Etymology keeps its own lullaby wars. Historians still argue whether the English word lullaby is simply lull plus bye-bye, a straightforward description of rocking and parting, or whether there's a whispering thread back to apotropaic charms like Lilith Abi. Lilith Begone written on amulets to keep a troublesome night spirit away from cradles. The safe take we've always liked, sounds that soothe and words that guard, and the two often braided. You're part of a timeline that discovers new ways to bottle the hush. In 1877, Thomas Edison tested his phonograph with Mary. Had a little lamb proving that voices could be saved for later often being midnight in a nursery, when the singer's throat wants a friend. By the early 20th century, wind-up music boxes chimed the waltz you know without ever needing water. Radio cradled whole nations with nighttime programs. Later tape decks, CDs, streaming playlists, and now ASMR channels do their own versions of Hush, the Village is Safe. Historians still argue whether recorded lullabies dilute communal bedtime rituals or simply extend them into modern schedules. But even the argument happens on a pillow somewhere. If you map lullabies, you also map the night fears they try to housebreak. You'll hear warnings about wind windows, foxes, witches, tides, the local hazard list, set to 70 BPM. The trick is tone. These aren't horror scores. They're tour guides that point at the shadows and say, "We see you and we're sleepy anyway." Remember the hyena laugh from the firelight section? Here the night creature appears on a leash of rhyme, all bark and no bite. A puppet made of air that sits down when the chorus says so. The body keeps showing up with receipts. Humming at the edge of sleep smooths micropauses in the breath. The jaw unclenches. The shoulders dial down. The child's weight in your arms becomes both kettlebell and cloud. Your back negotiates. Your knees sign the treaty. You're a metronome with postgraduate training in sway studies. Joke 3, if stepping on a creaky floorboard were an Olympic sport, you'd be the reigning champion of tiptoe gymnastics beam routine nursery edition. Not every culture stages bedtime as torchlit theater with solo vocals. Sometimes it's a low household hum, a rhythmic pat, a shared recitation, a whispered prayer that we'll visit later. The constant is the shape phrases that lengthen endings that drift down a predictable loop that tells the nervous system, the next thing is the same as the last thing, and the last thing was safe. Even when the words carry little stories, stars and sheep boats and bells, the tune does the heavy lifting, ferrying the mind from alert to adrift. You keep swaying a human pendulum, marking time between worlds. Outside winter minds its silver business. Inside, your melody walks the same path your ancestors walked past. Charms and fans, past scissors and salt, past curfew bells and compline carrying the small listener across a tiny bridge that always holds, then carrying you right behind them. The chorus softens, the room answers, and the night takes the hint. You pull the curtain an inch and let the winter sky breathe into the room, a glittering river that flows without sound. Stars say what fires say, gather close. Learn the route, go nowhere fast. You tilt your head, connect dots the way everyone does, recklessly, sweetly. And suddenly, the sky hosts hunters and foxes and teapots and shopping carts depending on who gets to hold the pencil. Joke 1, you identify a brand new constellation called the Lost Sock, located just left of Orion's belt, which explains everything about your laundry. Night throws up a perfect chalkboard for memory. When daylight steals detail, the brain needs landmarks it can carry, and the sky obliges with lights that keep their appointments. Long before you could open maps in your pocket, you opened the lid of heaven and read it as an atlas. The North Star hangs near the axis, a stubborn pin. If you're in the northern hemisphere and you measure how high Polaris sits above your horizon, you get your latitude in degrees close enough to keep a ship honest. You don't need calipers. You need practice and a story to wrap it in. When the bear stands so high, we sleep in colder winds, someone once said, and a family shifted camp by memory. Mainstream fact warming your mittened hands in ancient Egypt. People watched the heliacal rising of Sirius, its first dawn appearance after weeks lost in the sun's glare to mark the new year and to anticipate the Nile's flood. That sparkling arrival stitched calendars to the river's breath, a yearly drumbeat that kept agriculture in step with astronomy. The sky wasn't decoration. It was a to-do list you could see from anywhere with a horizon. You let your eyes walk wider. Polynesian wayfinders memorized star paths, which stars rose and set along voyages. How the swell spoke when an island hid beyond the curve. How birds commuted at dawn and dusk. The open ocean, terrifying on paper, turned into a library once you learned to read the waves and constellations together. In the Marshall Islands, navigators even built stick charts, lattices of palm ribs that mapped swell patterns and implied islands' tactile star maps for the sea itself. You are welcome to apply for assistant navigator once you can find the bathroom in the dark without smacking your shin on the laundry basket. The land kept the same contract. Australia's night hosts the emu in the sky-dark dust lanes running through the Milky Way, forming a bird whose position tells when to hunt for emu eggs. Songlines braid landscape and sky. Sing the route, and you carry a map in your voice. In the Mediterranean, you hear sailors talk about Arcturus and Antares as if they're familiar tavern signs. In the desert, Bedouin names bead across the night, so a caravan can move confidently by coolness rather than stumble under noon. Myths? Yes. Directions? Also yes. A story that rides with you is a compass in drag. Memory palaces open their doors when the sky is clear. You place a tale at a sequence of rooms, doorway, hall, window, and later walking. That mental architecture, you retrieve each scene. The ancients leaned on the method of loci for speeches. You lean on it to remember whether you already fed the cat. Now extend the palace upward pin, that cautionary hyena laugh from 2 sections ago, onto the star near the horizon. Hang the bundle of iron scissors under the pillow on the bright one over the roofline. Sprinkle your salt line charm across the Milky Way like a glittering fence. The absurdity helps. The brain snorts at serious intentions and remembers the silly hook. Quirky tidbit flickering like a candle in a tomb. Some Middle Kingdom Egyptian coffins carry diagonal star clocks painted on the inside lids. Lists of deacons, star groups sliding hour by hour across the night, so the deceased could tell time in darkness. Imagine it a private night dial for a traveler who planned to sleep a very long time. The idea is the same as your fan's hush, or your lavender sachet. The night is manageable if it has patterns, and patterns are kind if you can recite them. Of course, myths roll in, because brains hate blank ceilings. Orion becomes a boast or a warning. The Pleiades are sisters' chickens, a clump of glitter that tells farmers when to sow. The tale doesn't have to be cosmology with a tuxedo. It just has to be sticky. Repeated enough evenings, and a child grows up with an internal compass that hums when east blushes. Historians still argue whether Viking navigators actually used sunstones, polarizing crystals like Iceland's spar, to find the hidden sun in overcast skies. But everyone agrees that crystal or no crystal, people turned light into travel advice. You keep scanning, letting the sky's rhythm slow your room. Under old roofs, someone would step out after first sleep, tend the coals, check the frost on eaves, and look up. Above every village, the same star traffic ran. Streetlights later tried to retire starlight, but the habit persists. We still consult weather halos around the moon, still point out Venus to a child, and pretend that we discovered it. Joke 2. You confidently call every bright thing the North Star until someone points out the one that actually refuses to move. Navigation is also social glue. A group that can call a constellation by the same nickname can find each other in metaphors later. Meet me under the teapot becomes, let's use the same map for this argument. The night host community theater you perform? I applaud the sky writes the set. And because stories carry rules wrapped in sparkle, the travelers obey the gentle fence, even on the road. Don't wander beyond that ridge after dark. Not because a spreadsheet says so, but because the hunter there has a long reach and terrible table manners. Tools grew from this looking. The astrolabe lets you measure star height to cheat elegantly at math. The Nocturlabe does the same to read time from the Big Dipper's clock hand. Mariners marked the rail with notches. Monks carved calendars that remembered saints and seasons. Farmers cut windows to frame particular risings. Historians still argue whether the spread of mechanical clocks dimmed our attention to the stellar routine or simply posted a second timetable beside it. But your eyelids bless them. Vote nightly for astronomy's low-budget lullaby, regular dots in a dark field. You test your own memory palace now. Walk from Orion to Aldebaran to the Pleiades, to bright Jupiter if he's up, and feel how a little route keeps thoughts from bolting into tomorrow's emails. The same drift that trained sailors trains your breath longer on the out shoulders, low tongue relaxing away from the roof of your mouth. Sleep likes a path. A star story is a path with retro reflectors. One last sky quirk before the quilt claims you. Some Arctic parents used to tell children that the northern lights were playing ball with a walrus skull, and you mustn't whistle or the lights will swoop down another gentle fence at the edge of a very real hazard. Whether the physics says charged particles or gods with mittens, the rule is the same: stay close, small one, and watch from here. Joke 3, you do not whistle. You clap silently, like a very supportive seal. You close the curtain, and the room regains its hush. The fan keeps its coastal rumor. Inside, your inner navigator folds the stick chart, sets down the astrolabe, and leaves a tiny compass rose on the nightstand made of nothing but breath. Polaris keeps the watch outside. The story keeps it in here. You turn onto your side, feel the line from window to pillow like a reliable trade wind, and drift along it, star by remembered star. You turn back to the hearth inside the room. No sparks now, just the steady fan and the glow of a voice, and you notice how the story keeps glancing around to check that everyone is okay with everyone. This is the quiet work fables. Do they pass around invisible contracts and make sure the village wakes up as a village? The tale picks an animal, hands it a hat, fox, turtle, spider, crow, and lets it try on the problem so people can watch without anyone losing face. Joke 1, if a turtle can unionize patients and a fox can run HR for bad ideas, your apartment can probably negotiate dish duty. You've watched this at the fire we visited. Grievances turn into plots with the serial numbers filed off. There was once a young hunter with excellent calves. Remember him from the marsh by the Red Hill? Who forgot to check the wind. Lesson delivered: pride intact, meet safer tomorrow. The bedtime version is softer still. It arrives with yawns and blankets, not wagging fingers. Your nervous system, already on that long exhale from lullaby land, accepts the rule because the rule arrives wearing pajamas. Mainstream fact: to tuck under the quilt a web of Aesop's fables associated with a possibly real, probably composite storyteller of the 6th century BCE, wound through Greece and then the Roman world, reaching medieval classrooms where the boy who cried wolf and the tortoise and the hare became standard issue moral equipment. Schoolmasters copied them into little manuals. Traveling performers rehearsed them. Printers later turned them into chapbooks that fit a pocket and a nightstand. The point was never zoology. The point was that a town needs honesty pacing and fewer wolves in email subject lines. Across the world, you hear the same social engineering snugly wrapped. In India, the Panchatantra, a nested set of animal fables compiled over 2 millennia ago, taught Niti, the art of conduct, to princes, and, by generous leakage, everyone else. Its Arabic translation, as Kalila wa Dimna, carried those foxes and lions into new alphabets and fresh jokes. In Buddhist Jataka stories, the Buddha to be shows up in prior lives as beasts with a moral to carry. In West Africa, Anansi, the spider spins trickery into survival lessons. Among Pacific Northwest peoples, Raven shapeshifts between hungry and holy, stealing sun, and then teaching what bright things cost. You're not collecting trading cards. You're collecting social shortcuts that keep the circle unbroken till morning. Fables are how small groups outsource awkward conversations. It's late. Tempers are frayed. Resources are finite. If a boy's been crying wolf too often, You don't host a tribunal under the salt line. Nice callback to the threshold charm. You tell a story and let the group laugh in the right places. The laughter isn't mockery, it's consensus. Everyone agrees the rule exists, and tomorrow the sheep will be less stressed about their long-term career prospects. Joke 2. The sheep union files a grateful bleat and requests dental. Inside jokes matter just as much as morals. A nickname in a story. Left foot river beeline. Marta becomes a wink that marks insiders without burning outsiders. When you later say, "Don't pull a lost sock high constellation from last section," you've compressed a paragraph of coordination into a chuckle. The bed is where these encryptions finalize. Families and friend groups fall asleep on shared punchlines. Communities wake up with shorthand ready. The inside joke is a binding agent you can spread with a whisper. The rule package covers more than honesty and patience. It sneaks in taboo maps. Eat this, not that. Borrow, don't steal. Share the fat. Leave embers banked, your old curfew bell cousin chiming again, and respect the sleeping ring. A tale can encode territory. The creek beyond the owl stump belongs to the neighbor's weather sense when the Pleiades blur. Keep the boats tied, and fairness, the one who finds water names the path, but the path belongs to feet. Anthropologists write this down in thicker handwriting, yet at bedtime, the same content slips in with animal actors and happy sighs. Quirky Tidbit trots in, wearing legal robes in parts of medieval and early modern Europe. There were actual beast trials where pigs or goats were brought to court for damaging crops. Or worse, an odd theater of law that said in effect, even creatures answer to rules. We are not endorsing jurisprudence for your houseplant. We're noting how deeply communities wanted order to be a bedtime promise. If the law can talk to pigs, then telling the children that a wolf respects boundary lines doesn't feel entirely like make-believe. Power hides in fables too, and the whispers know it. Trickster tales often carry coded resistance. During slavery in the Americas, Brer Rabbit stories kin to Anansi taught how brains could outrun brute force tutoring listeners in the art of surviving unfairness without saying the quiet part out loud. Historians still argue whether every trickster episode is a neat little political manifesto or whether sometimes a rabbit is just a rabbit with professional-grade sass. But no one doubts that bedtime can become a vault where hope is kept safe until morning. Watch how the room choreographs fairness with the plot. The teller pauses so a child can supply the moral. A teen suggests an ending where the greedy crow has to clean the cookpot, a restorative sentence that sounds suspiciously like chore allocation. The parent nods and tosses a tiny bow to the hot pillow and lavender bag, our previous scented sentries, then adds a line about apologizing before sleep. The group murmurs the chorus they've made for this one. The night files everything under policy implemented. Even the mechanics of the tale teach cooperation. Call and response lets shy voices join without being exposed. Repeated refrains give younger listeners a job they can do well. Cliff, lowering opposite of cliffhanging, makes sure no one goes to sleep mid-peril. The hyena laugh from your firelight section returns as a safe prop, haha, tighten the sleeping ring by one hand, and then fades right on schedule. Joke 3, you grant the hyena union status too, with benefits including 1 cameo per month and 0 access to the snack drawer. If you zoom out, you notice how fables braid with ritual and architecture. The bed canopy whispers privacy and keeps drafts from interrupting the moral. The small night lamp, tamed ember, says the village is closed for maintenance. The fan hums that indoor ocean. You like masking creaks, so justice and mercy can finish their sentences. Tomorrow's quarrels will be softer, because tonight's script rehearsed better exits and kinder entrances. The diffusion of stories also builds bridges beyond the walls. A merchant carries Kalila Wadimna across a sea. A monk tucks the Gesta Romanorum into his bag as sermon seasoning. A griot at a West African court threads praise and satire into genealogy, pinning a ruler to a standard without drawing blood. Historians still argue Whether the earliest versions of some tales began in India, the Near East, Greece, or nowhere anywhere at all, parallel invention by brains facing similar puzzles. But the living fact is, calmer bedtime everywhere prefers drama that ends with the group intact. You lie there and feel the glue curing. The tale knocks gently on behavior. You meant to adjust anyway. It thanks you for not scrolling. The blue glare melatonin appreciates the professional courtesy and asks you to bring that same kindness to the person who burned the onions. It promises that inside jokes will carry you through awkward breakfasts, that patience has a turtle with a union card, and that even if a fox runs HR for bad ideas, HR takes notes. Somewhere scissors under a pillow shine invisibly. The salt at the threshold keeps its modest line. The stars outside move the same distances on their rails. The fan learns no new songs. The story puts the last chairs up on the tables of the day, sweeps with the soft broom, and flips the sign closed. See you in the morning. You roll to the cooler side, tuck a hand under your cheek, and let the glue set. You slip past the edge, as neatly as a fox through a fence, and feel the room tilt into the first long glide of sleep. The fan keeps that indoor ocean hush, the salt line at the threshold. Our modest little charm keeps its watch. The scissors under the pillow don't roll over. That's a metaphor and a callback. Shine invisibly while your brain lights up in rooms the day could never rent. Down in the hippocampus, the backstage librarian. We mentioned the shelves creak as the night crew wheels out a cart labeled replay. Joke 1, your neurons clock in like a film crew, with union rules ready to reshoot the scenes where you forgot your lines and mysteriously wore socks that didn't match the lost sock constellation. Sleep cycles stack like shoreline waves about 90 minutes each, with long, deep, non-REM swells that carry the body's heavy repair, and quicker REM crests, where the mind throws colors against the back of your eyes. In REM, your breath turns a little irregular. Your pulse does microdrama. The muscles go mostly offline so you don't act out the screenplay. Meanwhile, tiny place cells in the hippocampus, famous for mapping space, fire in sequences that match the paths you walked by day, as if somebody opened a miniature stick chart. Remember those Marshall Islands swell maps and ran a finger along the route? The night is a rehearsal hall with better lighting. Mainstream fact glowing in the corner. Like a small reading lamp in 1953, researchers Eugene Aserinsky and Nathaniel Kleitman formally described rapid eye movement sleep, noting those darting eyes and vivid dreaming on electroencephalogram tracings. Their lab window opened on a world where the brain supposedly resting was secretly running dress rehearsals. You feel that tonight, as fragments return a doorway. A laugh the hyenas rhythm from the hearth stories stitched into new sequences, so tomorrow's you can turn right quicker and speak kinder. What's the point of replay skills settle? A melody you practiced badly in the afternoon grows smoother by morning. A bike turn you wobbled yesterday becomes steady. Motor cortex whispers with the hippocampus until both agree on a cleaner script. Emotions settle too. The day's hot splashes of feeling cool under REM's odd chemistry, where noradrenaline levels stay unusually low, giving you a chance to revisit frights without the full alarm. The dream doesn't fix everything PG-13 rules apply, but it sands down sharp edges so you can pick thoughts up without bleeding. Then there's social rehearsal, the most human of night hobbies. You try on conversations you didn't have or did or hope to with characters who look like your neighbors until they don't. You hear yourself say the hard sentence gently. You watch someone else surprise you with generosity. Empathy gets practice reps. Tomorrow, when the real scene arrives, your mouth finds the road you paced in. Dream. Joke 2. Your brain casts your old math teacher as the bartender in a moonlit inn where the special is forgiveness, and somehow it works. The content can feel absurd because dreams travel by association, not spreadsheets. You walk through a door because the word salt reminded the backstage of the sea, which reminded it of boats, which reminded it of the star path you memorized last section. which reminded it of that joke you didn't tell, and now you're in a lighthouse run by turtles with excellent calves. The point isn't literalism, it's integration. Bits that used to belong to different rooms now share a wall. In waking life, that wall saves you steps. Historians still argue whether medieval dream visions, think of the Dream of the Rood, or Guillaume Deleuze's Roman de la Rose record genuine nocturnal experiences, or use the dream frame as a licensed stage for theology, satire, and romance. The answer shifts with the author and the era. But either way, the device admits a truth. You live nightly, the dream voice can say risky things safely, then hand you back to daylight with new lines memorized. Scribes and sleepers both exploit the miracle of "I heard it in a dream" to carry something delicate across. Quirky tidbit padding over like a friendly temple cat in the ancient healing sanctuaries of Asclepius, supplicants performed incubation, sleeping in special chambers, hoping the god would deliver a diagnostic or a cure in a dream. Priests kept records. Snakes, sacred and non-venomous, slithered around the precinct. Grateful patients hung votive casts of healed limbs. Whether the medicine was ritual placebo, hygiene suggestion, or sometimes very practical surgery, the nightly practice trusted that sleep story and body conspire for repair. Your lavender sachet and hot pillow are humbler cousins with the same hope. The hippocampus doesn't work alone. The default mode network hums like a distant transformer when you're off duty, linking memories to meanings. The prefrontal cortex loosens its tie, so metaphors can dance without chaperones. The amygdala, less jumpy in REM, lets you visit the hyena's laugh without moving the sleeping ring. Meanwhile, deep non-REM brings slow waves that sweep across cortex like the tide across a beach, a physical rhythm that seems to tip synapses toward balance, pruning, some strengthening others, so tomorrow's learning won't collapse under its own weight. Dreams also manage the filing system. Keep, toss, label, cross-reference. The librarian writes in pencil at 3 a.m. in ink by sunrise. Fragments you thought useless link to things you care about. Suddenly, the route through a problem includes a side door. That's why, after a good night, you sometimes wake with a sentence that solves a tangle, or with the kind of calm that does the job faster than any tool. Night turned noise into signal while your jaw let go of its determination to champion clenching as a sport. And yes, dreams can be gnarly. Nightmares show up when the system tries too hard to file fear. The trick at bedtime is to lower the cliff, not raise it. That's why your fan hums your light dims to that domesticated ember, and your stories refuse jump scares. You tell your nervous system the hyena is a prop, the door is latched, and the dream machine responds by practicing courage instead of panic. The scissors under the pillow, figurative, again cut the thread where it's snagged. A mainstream cultural thread winds through Freud's couch, Jung's mandalas, and modern sleep labs. We've always wanted translation rights to the night. Sometimes the best translation is modest. My brain replayed the maze and added kinder exits. Historians still argue whether ancient dream books from Egypt's old lists. If a man dreams he drinks warm beer, to Roman manuals reflect lived belief or scribal humor or both. But even the arguments concede the nightly need to make experience portable between worlds. You dream in images, but you wake with verbs. The verbs are small and excellent. Soften, check the wind bank, the embers share the fat. Call the lost laugh, gently sleep. Joke 3, your glymphatic system. The brain's nighttime rinse cycle sloshes. Cerebrospinal fluid like a janitor with a mop muttering, "Who left all these thoughts out?" The mop shines the hall. The thoughts get shelved. By the last cycle before dawn, REM grows longer, bolder, kinder. The plot pulls in the stars from your window. The stick charts from the sea, the fox from the fable, the hush from the lullaby, and the curfew bell you once heard in a book. You fall upward into a version of yourself who has already tried tomorrow once in cheap costumes and found the exits. When light finally blushes at the edges of the curtain, you'll turn the pillow. listen to the fan's last ocean wave, and bring back from the dream a few smooth stones you didn't have when you went in. The scissors stay asleep. The salt keeps its quiet line. The night crew files the final card and snaps off the lamp. Your breath settles into the shore's last lap. You roll to the side with the cooler sheet and let the door between rehearsal and morning swing on its well-oiled hinge. You glance at the doorway, the thin, bright rectangle where hallway light becomes room hush, and you feel the old patrol take its post. The night has edges, and edges invite guardians. Not just locks and latches, those you can point to. These are softer sentries. The stories that appoint a creature to sit right where curiosity gets ideas. They're not here to bite, they're here to babysit. If the hyena from the Hearth Tales was the boundary's laugh, these are the boundary's voice, low and persuasive. Joke 1. The underbed monster files a time-off request for weekends and promises to limit its duties to stopping you from getting a third glass of water for no reason. A threshold is a Lyman Latin for the beam at the door, and liminality is where humans get jumpy. It's where day becomes night inside, becomes outside child, becomes almost not a child, and thought becomes dream. So people appoint night sheriffs, bogies, house spirits, witches, with conditional mortgages on the forest. Straw ogres who make guest appearances at New Year. The job description is simple. Keep the small ones in, keep the cold out, and keep the imagination from sprinting into the bramble patch at 1 a.m. Your salt line at the threshold, that modest chalk of safety, already knows the drill. Your iron scissors under the pillow don't roll over. That's a callback. Quietly co-sign the patrol. Mainstream fact lantern bright in Japan's Akita Prefecture. The Namahage custom sends masked men in straw cloaks from house to house on New Year's booming. Any crybabies here? They're not villains. They're ritual auditors of chores and courage, scaring just enough to renew the household's contract with good behavior and warmth. Children sit a little taller. Grown-ups smile into their sleeves. The stove gets fed. The message lands, the edge is patrolled so you can sleep. Your fan hum. Our indoor ocean adds the weather report. Seas, calm currents, gentle monsters, unionized. Across the Alps. December brings Krampus processions, fur bells, carved masks, a jangle of winter mischief, keeping St. Nicholas company like a spicy side dish. Whether you meet the friendly mascot version or the bees, keep the bell on the outside of your costume at all times version. The folklore says the same thing. The curfew bell once said, "Behave, come home, share the fat." Remember that rule and let the village tidy itself for the long night. Historians still argue whether Krampus is a pre-Christian mountain spirit folded into Christian calendars, or mostly a 19th century exercise in theatrical fright with moral seasoning. But everybody agrees the doorframe likes to have a bouncer. You pass other doorkeepers on your global stroll. In Slavic forests, Baba Yaga lives in a hut on chicken legs, architecturally ambitious, HOA challenging, and tests travelers with questions that are more about manners than magic. Get the rules right, and the path opens. In old Rome, household gods, the Lares and Penates, kept watch from a little shrine, a lararium. You could greet the way you greet your fan. Thanks for the steady work. In the Mediterranean, blue glass eyes blink from doorposts. In Britain's older timber houses, carpenters scratched protective daisy wheels into beams and lintels. Apotrompaic sunbursts, whose job was to confuse mischief at the threshold. Quirky tidbit to tuck beside the lavender bag in Iceland. Tales of the Jólakötturinn, the Yule cat, warned that anyone who didn't receive new clothes by Christmas might be nibbled by a giant feline prowling the snow. Today, the cat's HR department has softened the memo to please wear something cozy. The weather is judging. These are not horror scripts. They're bedtime policies disguised as theater. A child hears outside is wild. Inside is tended. You belong where there is soup and story. That's not fear-mongering. That's boundary literacy. When the tale says, "Don't step beyond the salt after sundown," it's also saying, Your people will look for you here in the morning. Joke 2. The bogeyman under the bed updates its job title to Homebound Reinforcement Prints business cards and insists on a dental plan. Good molars are important for pronouncing brush your teeth and go to sleep. The monsters also handle the awkward bits adults don't want to sermonize. Don't whistle at the northern lights, some Arctic families say, or they'll swoop the kind of don't that doubles as stay warm small one and watch from here. On tropical coasts, spirits march at night. Close your shutters and hush till they pass, also known as don't wander near surf and reef after dark. In forests, a witch's hut bristles with questions you prepared for at the hearth. Be polite, trade fairly. Keep your promises. Take only what you need. And always, always check the wind. The hyena laugh from earlier. Returns on a leash bark, yes. Bite no. Lesson, yes. Scholars have their own bedtime debates. Historians still argue whether the bogeyman is primarily a social control invention, an adult ventriloquism of pleas for the love of all that is decent go to sleep, or a cultural fossil of actual hazards, coded into story predators, strangers, cliffs, water weather. The answer is likely a braid practical dangers, wrapped in memorable packaging, delivered at the hour when brains accept simple maps. Night guards aren't always scary. Sometimes they're charming enough to make eyelids heavy on contact. Anderson's Ol Lukoya the Sandman arrives to sprinkle dream dust and fold the day away. In some places, house spirits swap your tooth for a coin. In others, they tangle hair with night wind sleep braids with comedic consequences. The key is the perimeter. Once you agree where inside ends, everything with teeth becomes metaphor. Your fan keeps its hush. Your hot pillow, our barley-adjacent buddy, does the herbal part. The story turns the key without rattling it. Architects help too. A door with a lion head knocker says "rar" in a friendly font. A canopy bed turns a sleeping body into a room within a room, a circled wagon inside the house. A cribs bars aren't just carpentry. They're the visual of in here is quiet. At night, the line between masonry and myth blurs on purpose. The mind sees the bars, the canopy, the closed curtain, and then, if invited, imagines a guardian sitting exactly there reading a very small newspaper by the light of your very tamed ember. Joke 3. The guardian taps its watch and mouths, "We open again at breakfast. Please park your anxieties in the designated lot." Because you're you test the fence. You think about the glass of water, the one last text, the email that will absolutely not fix itself at 12:07 a.m. The story smiles and points at the door. Outside is the dark with a long to-do list for foxes and the lost sock constellation. Inside is a plot that lowers the cliff, a fan that hums tide charts, and a village that already agreed to sleep. The scissors gleam figuratively. The salt line keeps its neat edge, and your eyelids helpful. Little ushers dim the room like a theater's house lights before the second act. A last small tour. You remember the Namahage's straw swish, the Krampus bells, the chicken leg house, the daisy wheels scratched by hands you'll never meet. You recall how the hyena made you tighten the sleeping ring, but how we laughed while doing it. How the star map gave you a path without waking your shins. How the fables saved a cousin's pride while saving the sheep. It's all the same promise with different costumes edges are noticed. And notice lets rest happen. The night doesn't need a dragon to be dangerous. It needs a dragon to be narratable. That's the trick. Once the door has a name and the doorstep has a guard, you can close your eyes and let the backstage crew hippocampus default mode all the Union cousins wheel out the replay cart from last section. If you have to get up at 3, the monster under the bed will simply nod and check your name off the manifest. Then make sure you find the bathroom like a navigator who once memorized stick charts by starlight. The patrol is on your side. You roll onto the cooler sheet, a half smile at the fan's patient surf. The doorway thins, the bright rectangle dims, the posted guards tuck in their scarves and sip the tiny soup of duty. Outside, the night keeps its own long story. Inside yours lowers its voice, and moves one step closer to the edge, where day gives you back your thought. With the corners sanded, the threshold is safe, the monsters are hired, the village sleeps. You pull the book closer so the lamplight makes a warm island on the page, and you do the bedtime thing that looks tiny and is gigantic. You point. Your finger taps the picture of a fox in a scarf. A smaller finger taps the scarf and says, "Read and together you just did joint attention, the two-beam lighthouse that lets language steer into harbor." Your voice slows, climbs dips. The fan keeps its ocean hush. The salt line at the door is tidy. The scissors under the pillow still metaphorical. Please keep your head approved this lesson plan. Tonight's dojo is soft. The belts are pajamas. Joke 1, your student fees are payable in stickers, and one crumbly cookie that will absolutely decorate the sheets. Bedtime is low-stakes practice for big brain moves. Vocabulary arrives in slippers, not just cup and dog, but chimney patient, although tomorrow. Those are rare words in daytime errands. They flourish in stories where bears own umbrellas and teapots throw parties. Syntax stretches too. You model the gymnastic phrases because even though as soon as and the sentence breathes longer before it lands, just like your lullaby exhale, say it once and it's cute. Say it 5 nights and it's furniture. The body keeps tempo. The mouth learns the choreography, and the mind stitches meaning without feeling graded. Mainstream historical fact flutters in like a ribbon bookmark in 1658. The educator John Amos Comenius published Orbis Pictus, The Visible World, in pictures often called the first children's picture book, pairing images with short labels and scenes so beginners could link words to the world. A straight line runs from that little book to your lamplit page, where a drawn fox and the printed word fa-ox keep each other company like neighbors who knit on the same porch. The method is old, an excellent show name repeat smile. Pretend play sneaks in under the blanket and sets up a tiny theater. You give the fox a voice that is suspiciously related to your grocery store voice. The child objects. The fox is reassigned a gravelly whisper. The hyena from our hearth stories gets a cameo laugh. PG-13 sleeping ring not required tonight. You switch points of view. "I lost my scarf," says the fox. "I will help you," says the turtle, and a little brain flips between me and not me, like a gymnast on a low bar. That flipping is empathy practice with extra pillows. Tomorrow, when a sibling borrows a toy, the sentence "I will help you" might still be warm from the night before. You run the dojo like an improv club for tiny linguists. What do you think happens next? Opens the door labeled prediction. How do you think the turtle feels? Unlocks perspective. Where did you see another scarf calls back to memory palaces you've been decorating with stars since Section 5. You get repairs for free, no rocket is red, and you say, "You're right." And now conversation has turned taking correction and grace. Joke 2. You accept the demotion from head of facts to assistant color checker with dignity and a glitter sticker. Your body still does the vagus nerve choreography from the lullaby section. Long exhale, soft consonants, the rocking chair cadence hiding inside prose. The room agrees. The hot pillow resumes its barley-adjacent hobby. The lavender sachet reports good attendance. The fan hums. No sudden noises, like a kind stage manager. It matters because learning prefers safety. When the door is guarded and the light is amber, the nervous system spends its coins on curiosity, not defense. Quirky tidbit slips in with a paddle. Early modern children sometimes learned letters on hornbooks. Little wooden paddles topped with a printed sheet alphabet prayers, protected by a thin layer of transparent horn. Imagine tucking that by a candle and tracing ABC with a soot-smudged finger while someone murmurs along. Your glossy board book is that minus the horn and plus a visiting fox with knitwear opinions. Now the ongoing debate, which bedtime handles more calmly than any comment section. Researchers still argue whether the famous word gap claims big scary numbers about how many fewer words some children supposedly hear are the right way to think about language growth, or whether quality of interaction turns questions. playful back and forth wears the crown. Bedtime votes for quality by design. You're not dumping syllables into an open mouth. You're building a little bridge of attention with planks. You can count, look, point, say, wait, giggle, try again. Dialogic reading. The fancy term for you, make the kid your co-narrator, fits this hour perfectly. You prompt with who, what, where. You expand their answer. Yes, a scarf, a red scarf. You invite a memory. Do you remember the lost sock constellation? You circle back to our fables. What would the turtle do, race or pace? Refrains let small mouths master a line like a chorus. You're not merely telling. You are handing the mic to someone who just learned to hold it. Language is also culture in pajamas. Proverbs slap the table gently. Slowly, slowly, the snail climbs the hill. A cousin of our turtle union from Section 6. Call and response patterns from church, mosque, temple, or living room. Embed cadence that later makes poetry feel like home. Riddles sneak under the blanket and make thinking a game. What has a bed but never sleeps? The child guesses river. You grin, because tonight, everything is river, even the fan. History keeps dropping in with dusty but delighted shoes. Mother Goose collections bundled rhymes in the 18th century that parents still whisper, sometimes Baudelarized for gentleness, sometimes kept weird because children love a bit of cosmic oddity before lights out. Street storytellers in Japan performed kamishibai with picture cards. When electricity and schedules moved the show indoors, the cards turned into pages on laps. Historians still argue whether mass printing standardized childhood or merely gave families more to riff on, but your couch is not litigating. It is practicing pronouns. Bilingual households run a deluxe dojo. Bedtime can split languages by character. The fox speaks grandma's tongue. The turtle speaks the school's, or by scene at the river we switch. Switching costs brains a tiny fee and pays it back with flexibility. Some scholars still argue whether code switching at night confuses or clarifies for beginners. Your lived evidence is that the child asks for both languages, like cookies, and then uses them with grandparents like a pro. Meanwhile, the hyena laugh is bilingual without trying. You keep an eye on plot architecture without announcing a syllabus. Beginning, a fox loses a scarf. Middle, a turtle looks, asks, thinks because, and the scarf is found. The fox says, thank you. The turtle says, you're welcome. The knight says, lights lower. Bedtime shrinks the cliff. You avoid leaving characters dangling over ravines because adrenaline and melatonin hate sharing a room. That's craft and kindness. Tomorrow's dreams remember that hippocampal rehearsal from Section 7 will likely replay the search with calmer edits, and language will tag along for polish. The small rituals around the story teach conversational rights. Choosing the book is turn-taking. Turning the page is power with responsibility. No speed flipping during crucial fox emotions. Closing the cover is closure. Kissing the corner. Yes, you do that is absurd and perfect as sign-off. The curfew bell would respect. Joke 3, the book files a workplace safety complaint about crumbs. You settle out of court with a gentle dusting and a promise to keep cookie settlements to daylight. Tired adults learn here too. You catch yourself softening commands into invitations, swapping don't for let's, practicing the diplomacy you wish your inbox could learn. The day's rough syllables sand down. You listen for the child's invented words, snugglest, dark sparkle, fan ocean, and you borrow them because grown-up vocabularies get stale without small poets. Language is a shared toy. Bedtime is the safe rug. By the time you reach the last page, the scarf is home. The fox yawns with the reader. The turtle promises a picnic tomorrow, a word that glows like a nightlight, and your co-narrator's eyes do the long blink. You whisper one more question the way sailors once checked Polaris, steady, predictable, comforting. Where should we keep the scarf? The child points to the chair by the salt line. The monster under the bed nods, now rebranded as household compliance. The hyena's laugh stays in the theater. The fan hums the shoreline. The book closes with a soft clap like gentle applause, and the dojo bows to the night. You feel the room settle the way a canoe settles when a second person steps in. Carefully wait meeting weight until the wobble turns to glide. That's trust at bedtime. The hush you can only buy together. The fan keeps its indoor ocean. The salt line at the threshold minds its modest border. The lavender sachet and hot pillow our two tiny botanists take attendance. Then touch, voice, and attention braid themselves into a rope strong enough to lower you into sleep. Joke 1, your blanket issues you a cuddle permit with unlimited renewals, pending satisfactory squish. Attachment is the body's favorite bedtime technology. A hand on your shoulder. A sleeve brushed as a page turns a voice that remembers your name without needing to see you. These are the small, scandalously effective hacks that tell the watchman inside you to holster the flashlight. Oxytocin strolls out from the hypothalamus like a friendly usher, dimming the house lights on threat detection and brightening the aisle lights on. You're safe here. Your heart rate shadows the voice you trust. Your breathing sneaks into sync, a subtle duet you didn't rehearse and can't stop humming once it starts. Mainstream historical fact: to tuck beneath the quilt in the late 1960s and early 1970s, psychologist Mary Ainsworth developed the strange situation to observe how infants use caregivers as secure bases. Brief separations and reunions, revealing patterns we now call secure avoidant, ambivalent, and later disorganized. The labels are imperfect. The debate's loud. We'll get there, but the take-home for bedtime is simple. When the person you trust says, "I'm here," your nervous system stands down with a sigh. You can hear. There's a gentler cousin in neonatal wards called Kangaroo Care skin-to-skin contact for preterm babies that improves temperature regulation, stabilizes heart rate, and supports feeding. The body votes with metrics for something the village already knew. Closeness is medicine. Nighttime rituals steal the same trick in smaller doses. A warm palm, a steady hum, a steadying gaze, tiny kangaroos in civilian clothes. You can measure the team sport in the lab and also in the lamplight. Threat shapes on fMRI quiet when you hold a trusted hand. The amygdala stops acting like a car alarm in a windy parking lot. At home, the effect looks like a child sighing and melting, or a partner's shoulders dropping 2 vertebrae when someone begins. Once upon a time, your household rehearses this daily. Attention is a currency. Bedtime invests it where returns are excellent. The architecture helps. A canopy makes a second room inside a room a visible promise that drafts and glances won't intrude. A small lamp, domesticated ember, becomes the good neighbor who knows when to leave. Even the fan participates. Constant sound equals no surprises. You add the veteran props, iron, scissors still. Metaphorical, don't test them with your ear. Our neat salt line, the hop lavender duet, and you've built an environment that says, you can set the pack down. Trust scripts are culture shaped. Some households prefer a lullaby in chorus, everyone on the same beat. Others swear by a solo whisper and a closed door. Anthropologists still argue whether the modern fashion for solitary sleep in separate rooms is a triumph of privacy or a side effect of industrial schedules and square footage, and whether co-sleeping is an ancient default or a romantic myth with soft lighting. The history is modeled longhouses and cottages, once braided snores by necessity. Later, corridors and etiquette invented privacy like an appliance. Bedtime thrives either way when the ritual fits the people in the room. Quirky tidbit walks in wearing a quilt and blushing lightly in parts of early America and Northern Europe. Bundling let courting couples share a bed with a board or sewn sacks between them, a chaste invention. With a practical aim, you can talk for hours without freezing. There were also courting candles that rationed the visit by wax height. Whatever you think of the arrangements, please keep the PG-13 sign up. The subtext is familiar. Night is where bonds negotiate their rules, and furniture sometimes joins the ethics committee. Back in your room, you notice how story is the third partner in these bonds. The teller, the listener, and the tail itself make a triangle that carries more weight than any two can manage alone. Tonight, your triangle keeps folding in. Our old friends the hyenas laugh harmless on a leash, the lost sock constellation grinning above the dresser. The stick charts of Section 5 now reduced to a finger tracing the blanket seam. The curfew bell cousin that whispers bank the embers, close the emails. Familiar callbacks are social Velcro. We've been here before, they say, and it turned out fine. Humor oils the hinge. Joke to your teddy bear chair of the plush union demands recognition as a licensed co-regulator, citing years of service with no vacation, and you immediately approve the motion because the data support it and the bear's face is persuasive. Laughter at lights out is not a breach of the yawn treaty. It's proof of trust. You can risk a giggle because you aren't patrolling the horizon anymore. Trust also means competence is shared. You dim the lamp. Another voice takes over the line. A small hand turns the page with ceremonial gravity. You let yourself be carried by the cadence you set in motion, a peculiar generosity to your future self. The hippocampus from Section 7 thanks you for the stable conditions. The dream crew will have cleaner footage to edit because the bedtime scene contained kindness instead of static. Of course, families aren't manuals. Some nights, the trust rope frays a late arrival, a sharp word, a schedule with elbows. That's when rituals show their sturdiness. The hop and lavender keep their posts. The fan hum covers the creak that would have become a grievance. The script lowers its own cliff by adding an extra refrain where needed. You can say, "We'll fix it in the morning because bonds permit deferred maintenance." Joke 3, your household's customer support desk operates on a strict policy of please submit your ticket in daylight, and somehow everyone sleeps better for it. History keeps bringing receipts for bonds at night. Medieval households piled into great beds, not because romance novels asked them to, but because winters did. The carved posts and heavy curtains were climate control and social contract in oak. Later, fashionable couples in some cities slept in separate rooms, like gentle roommates with excellent hallway banter, proving that intimacy isn't a bed size, but a trust size. Historians still argue whether these arrangements signaled changing ideals of affection, or simply different heating and inheritance logistics. Your pillow shrugs and says, "Either way, I hold heads." Oxytocin doesn't do the whole job. Trust has carpentry choreography grammar. It's in the repeated reach for a shoulder, the reflex of a squeeze, the predictable joke right before the light clicks down the ritual, where someone always asks, "Anything you need before sleep?" and someone always replies, "No, I'm good," or "Water, please," and the water appears without a sigh. It's in the grace of not reviewing the village spreadsheet after 10, and in the confidence that the monsters you hired in Section 8 will shoo away the idea of a third glass on their own. The last minutes of this section feel like a porch, after the curfew bell lamp's low chairs, scraped back into order embers, banked under safe ash. You and yours are vessels parallel in the same quiet bay, tugging on the same tide, rocking each other still, even without touching. The scissors gleam invisibly. The salt line holds. The fan is a friendly ocean with no weather warnings. Oxytocin writes a polite note in your nervous system's HR file employee may safely power down. You roll closer or away from your side or whisper the closing line. The rope of voice-touch attention stays tied until morning, even when sleep takes your hands off it. Bonds don't prevent the night, they furnish it. And once the trust is paid in full, the mind does the easiest thing. It goes where stories go. When a breath comes in and leaves longer, and the village sleeps with its door gently, confidently closed, you feel the room tilt from cozy to consecrated, the way steam from your mug turns a circle of lamplight into a small chapel. The fan keeps its indoor ocean. The salt line at the threshold looks freshly raked. The iron scissors under the pillow. Yes, still metaphorical. Thank you for minding. Your ears gleam in the imagination like polite ushers. Tonight, the story brings its cousins, prayers, charms, and tiny rites that tell the dark what it means. Joke 1 your bedside table now qualifies as a multi-faith service desk. Candle water glass, lavender sachet, and one emergency cookie for spiritual emergencies only. Ritual stands exactly where sleep begins on purpose at the edge. You whisper a familiar phrase, touch a token, draw a sign in the air, check the window latch, and the nervous system hears. The watch has changed. Meaning isn't just philosophy. It's choreography that steadies breath and assigns roles. Even your yawn feels like liturgy if you let it stretch to the cadence we've practiced since Lullaby Land. A mainstream historical fact warms the pillow in the 6th century. The rule of Saint Benedict formalized the monastic hour called compline, the completion of the day, closing with the Nunc Dimittis, that quiet now let your servant depart in peace. After that silence, doors of the heart latched as neatly as the cloister's gates. You don't need a habit or a tonsure to steal the template. A short reading your Fox and Turtle book counts a confession of ordinary clumsiness, a final blessing sometimes translated as sleep well, and then the great hush where even the hyenas laugh from our hearth stories knows to wait outside. Other houses turn the same key with different teeth. In Jewish bedrooms, the bedtime Shema wraps the night with proclamation and protection. Some add the Hamapil blessing, naming the gift of sleep and asking to rise in peace. In Muslim homes, a dua before sleep folds the day away, often with verses recited by heart, and a turn onto the right side echoes the Prophet's habit. In Buddhist practice, loving kindness metta radiates outward like your fan's constant breeze. May you be safe, may you be at ease, a bedtime social network that works even offline. Hindus may murmur a short shloka, entrusting the mind to a deity, the way you entrust your keys to the small dish by the door. The gestures differ, the sigh sounds the same. Shrines travel. A Catholic might keep a small cross near the bed. An Eastern Orthodox icon catches the lamplight like an ember tamed for the wall. A Sikh family opens the day and closes it with lines from the Guru Granth Sahib, letting language do what blankets do cover. Historian, voice note for the night. Historians still argue whether home devotions expanded in response to industrial schedules that pulled people from evening communal services, or whether the domestic altar simply moved where the warmth was closer to beds, kitchens, and the one lamp everyone shared. Either way, the house learned to sing. Charms hover at the threshold, where we've spent so much time together. A blue glass eye Nazer watches the door with friendly suspicion. A Hamza hand says, "Not today to mischief." A red thread tied by an elder does what salt did for our sill, makes a line that meaning agrees to honor. You hang a Bridget's cross above the bed. In some Irish homes, the rushes woven at Candlemas to invite protection through the last cold weeks. In Slavic cupboards, a spoon of grain and a pinch of salt sit together like two retired sentries, gossiping about wolves that no longer bother to apply for visas. Your hot pillow and lavender sachet, our barley and garden duo, fit the same league mildness as Ward. Quirky tidbit shuffles in politely with straw on its shoes. English witch bottles, stoneware jugs spiked with pin's hair, and sometimes urine were once buried under hearths or thresholds to trap malice like a fly under a glass. The idea was unsanitary by daylight and utterly practical by candlelight. If fear must live somewhere, let it live outside your bed. Archaeologists keep finding them during renovations, a past generation's version of "please not in here." If you're considering one for your studio apartment, perhaps stick with the lavender. Your landlord and your nostrils will thank you. The body likes that prayers and charms come with motions. You wash hands, you face a direction, you bow, you touch doorposts. Mezuzah kiss for some as you leave and return, so the map of your home becomes a liturgy in wood and air. Your fan hums an antiphon steady as chant. The canopy bed, our private tent, whispers like a portable tabernacle for rest. The rhythm of actions puts breath on rails. Rails lead to sleep. Sleep leads to tomorrow with fewer sharp edges. The old curfew bell couvre-feu cover the fire rings again by memory. Night used to be communal by necessity. The bell said, "Quench flame, stop risk." Your rituals keep that public safety logic at human scale. You bank your day's embers under ash, a short inventory, a soft apology to a name that deserves it, a promise to put the village spreadsheet back in the drawer until morning. Joke 2. You grant your worries a single line in the guest book: name, time, purpose of visit, and then show them politely to the lobby, where the underbed monster, now director of night operations, offers them decaf and a pamphlet on office hours. Music belongs here too. A soft psalm, a verse from the guru, a zikr that turns God's name into breath, a mantra that sands the tongue smooth, a lullaby promoted to sacrament for the night. The repetition works the same whether your theology is cathedral high or whisper small. The mind needs phrases that know their way to the exit. Your hippocampus, the backstage librarian, lovingly files each refrain so dreams can do their rehearsal without tripping over clutter. House objects sneak into the choir. A rosary clicks like rain. A mala slides like slow beads of time. A tasbih counts gratitude until the numbers soften into smile. Even the act of turning off the last light can be a rite if you assign it a line goodnight house, so your walls know you've handed them the watch. The scissors under the pillow flick their imaginary badge. The salt line gleams like a tiny Milky Way. The lost sock constellation winks from the dresser knob, benign redeemed home. We keep our honesty clause. Not every charm is charming. Historians still argue whether a 1,000-year tangle of folk practices, amulets, spells, dream books, planetary hours should be read as sincere metaphysics, social placebo, women's household medicine, hidden in plain sight, or just the human fondness for try everything when the baby won't sleep. The answer is probably yes. In the half-lit room, practical and mystical hold hands like two kids allowed to stay up late as long as they don't break anything. You give the night a container by speaking out loud the things you release. Some traditions offer a bedtime forgiveness. I forgive all who hurt me today. May I be forgiven, which steals teeth from grudges so they don't gnaw the sheets. Others list gifts, 3 gratitudes, 5 if the day pinched, because counting blessings is the old cousin of counting sheep, and much better company. Joke 3. You thank the fan, the blanket, and the inventor of socks, with enough elastic not to tour the house solo during laundry. Peace be upon that hero. Architecture joins in again. Daisy wheels, scratched into beams, look like suns holding the roof in a compass of lines. Mezuzot glint on doorframes. A paper teru bozu in Japan stares down clouds for tomorrow's picnic and looks quietly adorable tonight. A tiny oil lamp in India stains the air with the warm syllable of ki. A nightstand drawer hides a pocket siddur, a small Quran, a dog-eared prayer card, a folded metaverse, a notepad for leaving tomorrow, a message. We'll talk then. And then, as Compline teaches in every language it borrowed: Latin, Arabic, Hebrew, Pali, Punjabi, your grandmother's dialect, the last line descends. Into safe hands you say in your way, guard us through the night. May all beings be at ease. Let me sleep and rise in peace. The room hears. The fan keeps the sea going. The scissors, still symbolic, still friendly, go off duty. The salt line glows like a remembered star path inside the house. The hyena laugh from section 2 waits outside the circle, tamed by chorus. You close the eyes of the room the way you close your own, one shade at a time, until even the ritual is sleeping. You slide a book back onto the nightstand, and without getting up, time travel by lamp. The fan keeps its indoor ocean. The salt line at the door glows like a tiny Milky Way. The scissors under the pillow, still honorary, still figurative, clock in for their quiet shift. Tonight, the story changes, formats ink to airwaves to pixels, but the job stays the same: hold. The night kindly. Joke 1. Your phone clears its throat like a street magician and says, Pick a card, any card, as long as it's notification shaped. Printing first. A hand once copied a prayer or a bedtime charm for a single household. Then, movable type let words multiply like winter stars. Mainstream fact to warm your blanket edge around the mid-15th century. Johannes Gutenberg's press in Mainz married metal type to oil-based ink and a wine press's sturdy squeeze, turning rare into red. Suddenly, there were chapbooks, cheap little booklets hawked by chapmen who sang their wares ballads, wonder tales, riddles, saints and scoundrels, portable company for evenings. When the curfew bell cover the fire cover the day said, "Stay in." Families read aloud, not because anyone banned fun, but because fun had just been printed in bulk. You can picture a cottage nightbed curtains, pulled tallow dip trimmed, a mother or older sibling, sounding out a fable while a child's fingers play with the fringe. The book becomes a new kind of hearth, the domesticated ember with a spine letting the hyena laugh from our earlier campfire section. Visit politely from a page. Penny prints democratize lullaby lyrics. Almanacs park the moon's phases beside recipes and dreams. Mother Goose gathers nonsense that proves remarkably sensible at bedtime. Historians still argue whether the rise of novels in the 18th century undermined oral storytelling by pulling each person into a private page world, or whether families simply switched to reading aloud together, giving the living room its own chorus. Your room votes for both solitude on the page, solidarity on the couch, quirky tidbit papery and practical. Those same chapbooks after heavy use often retired as pie tin liners or pantry shelf paper, a second career that left printers in crumbs. Waste, not want not. Also, nothing says circulation numbers like literal circulation around a crust. Meanwhile, night tech improves whale oil to kerosene, to gaslight, to safe-ish lamps. Lucifer's early matches strike an instant star, so reading doesn't depend on flint negotiations. The book and the flame sign a treaty you read. I'll glow. Then the room grows a cathedral walnut cloth dials and the air speaks. Radio reorganizes the evening like a patient stage manager. Families lean toward the speaker as if toward a shared pillow. The voice is warm, close, and everywhere at once. You hear serialized adventures soften after 9 comedy earlier, lullaby programs slipping children toward pillows. Fireside chats turn domestic rooms into civic hearths, a president sounding like a neighbor you'd hand a shovel to. The magic is intimacy at scale your breath entrains to someone 100 miles away, and yet the cadence sits right here on your quilt. Practicalities shape the ritual. Sets take center tables. Schedules print in newspapers. After the news becomes a timing device for baths and blankets. Cliffhangers are fine on Fridays. On school nights, you prefer cliff lowering our running craft rule so adrenaline doesn't pick a fight with melatonin. Sponsors sell cocoa and sleepwear between acts, a commerce chorus to the hush. Historians still argue whether radio unified nights into a single national rhythm or erased local cadences that once differed from village to village. Your fan hums the compromise. Keep the national lullaby, add your household's refrain. Television arrives like a nightlight with opinions. Early screens glow in living rooms, where bedtime expands to include weather maps and black and white jazz. Networks once signed off at night remember the test pattern and the anthem making sleep a scheduled civic courtesy. Later channels multiply, then they never stop, then screens shrink and follow you to bed. The glow that used to live across the room now lives 6 inches from your nose. Joke 2, your phone assures you it's in night mode, which is like a nightclub promising it's a library because the lights are purple. The physiology from Section 3 files a gentle grievance. Blue-weighted light tells the little foreman in your brain, the suprachiasmatic timekeeper, that noon is forever. Apps try to warm the palate. You tilt the screen. You vow to stop at one more paragraph. Paragraphs breed like rabbits with professional ambitions. Content matters too. Doom scrolling turns your amygdala into a car alarm in a windy lot. So, you draft a digital salt line. The same way grain and salt once sat by the threshold as household sentries, you put the phone to bed in another room, or at least on airplane mode with a tiny goodnight. Some nights, you even give it a bedtime story. Once upon a time, a phone stopped buzzing and everyone slept. Audio refuses to surrender its crown. Podcasts pick up radio's sleepy baton, whispered histories, deliberately boring monologues about office supplies, long walks through imaginary towns where nothing happens on purpose. ASMR feeds the vagus nerve you trained in the lullaby section. Page turns haircuts, soft clicks, the dry brush rustle of someone cleaning an already cleaned shelf, signals that say, close without any danger. The trick is, consent you choose the voice, the pace, the endings that land like feathers, not anvils. Your underbed monster now, Director of Night Operations, updates its SOP, no true crime marathons after 10, no breaking news in the quilt. And if the hyena laugh appears, it must wear slippers. You reinvent old tech in miniature. A white noise app copies the fan you already trust. The fan smiles and keeps doing union-approved ocean. Ebooks dim to sepia and pretend to be paper. Audiobooks add a sleep timer so the narrator can tiptoe away on page 142. Guided sleep stories repackage. Compline for secular ears begin breathe. Picture a harbor at dusk. Forget your inbox exists. Good night. The hippocampus, the backstage librarian from Section 7, cheers cleaner conditions mean tidier replay. Not all screens are traitors. A video call lets a traveling parent read the Fox and Turtle book from a hotel lamp. A grandparent sings in another language, and the child falls asleep bilingual on a Wednesday. Night tech well-governed expands the village circle without inviting the wolves. Your household writes policies like a small parliament. The plush union chair Teddy seconds the motion for chargers outside the bedroom. The Hop Lavender Coalition offers aromatherapy enforcement. The Lost Sock constellation becomes your lock screen at 9 p.m., a starry reminder to dock the day. Quirky broadcast footnote. Once upon a late-night stations filled insomniac hours with slow TV, 8 hours of a train rolling through mountains, a canal boat drifting through locks. Evidence that hypnosis doesn't require a pocket watch, just scenery with excellent manners. You adopt the genre privately, aquarium cams, fireplace loops, snowfall from a porch you don't own. The brain relieved of jump cuts returns the favor with longer breaths. The culture wars about bedtime media have vintage. Moralists once fretted that novels would overheat imaginations. Later, comics were accused of mugging childhood. Then TV allegedly ruined attention. Then video games. Then phones. Tomorrow, something else with a battery. Historians still argue whether each wave truly eroded sleep or whether new forms simply required new rules and better lamps. Your room pilots. The obvious compromise format changes. Function doesn't. You still need a voice that lowers cliffs a pace, that matches exhale, an ending that closes the door without locking it from the outside. So you make a little stack. A paper book for off-ramps, a podcast with a timer, a screen that obeys sunset colors, a charging station outside the salt line. You assign the underbed director of night operations to patrol just one more promises. You keep the hyena laugh for daytime radio. You let the fan win any negotiation about background audio. Joke 3, your playlist is 90 minutes long. One sleep cycle because you enjoy the feeling of your phone getting bored before you do. When the lamp finally clicks down, you're back where the story always meant to bring you a voice in the dark. Sometimes yours, sometimes borrowed, a body that remembers the choreography. Inhale, exhale, settle a room that keeps its promises. Scissors, honorary, salt bright. Monsters, unionized, plushes on duty. Printing airwave screens, they're only boats. The river is the same attention tethered to kindness until sleep can tow you the rest of the way. You pull the quilt higher, listen to the steady ocean of the fan, and let the night, which has upgraded its tools but not its purpose, carry you forward. You tour your house like a sleepy inspector clipboard replaced by a blanket, checking how every object conspires to walk you from still awake to already gone. The fan keeps its indoor ocean union rules respected. The salt line at the threshold is crisp, a chalk whisper that tells the dark where to stop. The iron scissors under the pillow still metaphorical. Please do not attempt a headstand glint obligingly in the mind. Beds are not just rectangles, they're vehicles, and tonight you test drive models from across time to see which ones shift best from story to slumber. Joke 1, your mattress identifies as cloud adjacent and insists you address it as Sir Floof. Start with the hooded carriage, the four-poster. In cold, drafty rooms, a tester and curtains turned beds into little houses. Air warmed by breath, sound muffled. Privacy invented anew every night. That canopy is a story tent. You dim the lamp, domesticated ember pull fabric close, and the voice you invited to read gets acoustics worthy of a concert hall for two. The same shape appears as mosquito netting in warm climates, a castle of gauze that says to insects, outside please, while your nervous system hears perimeter secure. You don't have to own velvet to love a canopy. A simple cloth over a frame will do the alchemy. On you go, padding through galleries of sleep. In Japan, you kneel to tatami straw mats that ask feet to soften and unroll a futon that turns the whole room into bed, then back into living space by daylight. Mobility is the lullaby here. Nothing bulky, everything breathable, a ritual of unrolling that tells your hippocampus, our backstage librarian, it's time to mark a new chapter. In Korea, radiant floors ondule heat from below. You lie on quilts with the quiet pride of a lizard who finally won the thermostat wars. In northern China, a Kang-raised brick flue-warmed platform serves as seat by day, bed by night, proof that architecture can be furniture and hearth at once. The story travels easily in these rooms because the room itself participates warm, below dim, above edges clear. Europe collects curiosities that double as sleep inventions. Mainstream fact, to fluff your pillow, the great bed of Ware, built around the late 16th century and famous enough to snag a Shakespeare shout-out, was roughly 11 feet wide and Inn's civic sofa, where multiple travelers could sleep at once. You will not be hosting a reunion on your mattress tonight. HRIE, the plush union, does not approve, but the point stands. Design declares a philosophy. That bed said, we are many. The night is one. Later beds got private and plush. Duvets floated down from Scandinavia like tame clouds. Two duvet systems now save relationships across latitudes by preventing blanket tug-of-war. Joke 2. Your relationship therapist is a pair of separate comforters and a fan with excellent conflict resolution skills. Then there are box beds and cupboard beds. Dutch bedstaden, Breton alcoves, wooden cubbies you slide into like a ship's berth. Quirky tidbit for the tour, some came with little doors, turning the sleeper into a tidy piece of cabinetry. Practical. In an unheated room, absolutely. Psychological delicious. You get your own fort. Modern cousins include lofts tucked into bookcases, Murphy beds that pivot like polite magicians, and sleeping porches, screened verandas, where in the early 20th century, families weathered summer with night air for medicine and mercy. Fresh air for tuberculosis patients helped popularize those porches. But even healthy households adopted the breeze. You too may owe your affection for open windows to a grandparent who knew July better than air conditioning did. Lighting follows the same hospitality rules. Heavy curtains are the refined cousins of our curfew bell's old command, cover the fire, cover the day. Blackout drapes negotiate with the moon. She still visits, but politely. Tiny lamps with low color temperatures flatter melatonin. The fan hum keeps sudden noises in the lobby. Carpets absorb footfall. Door sweeps quiet hallway drafts. A house built for sleep acts like a stage crew. You see the lead story breath bond, not the rigging. That's design as lullaby. Furniture placement whispers too. A headboard against a solid wall. A view of the door without sleeping in the coffin position, feet pointed straight at the exit. A path to the bathroom that spares shins from night diplomacy with the dresser. Feng Shui and Vastu Shastra offer maps for this sometimes poetic, sometimes practical. Historians still argue whether such systems improved rest through airflow and light management, or by placebo power. I believe I'm safe, so I sleep. But the result weighs the same in the morning. Fewer midnight startles, more consistent drift. Beds teach climate as fluently as maps teach navigation. In tropical zones, woven charpoys lift air under sleepers. In deserts, thick walls bank cool. In snow countries, sleeping platforms climb away from stone floors and drafts. Chimneys withdraw smoke from older houses, so the air you breathe isn't arguing with the kitchen. Clay, brick, lime, plaster, all the craft of walls participate in your REM cycles, whether you think about them or not. The house is your lullaby, disguised as architecture. Your own room gets a usability upgrade via ritual storage. The nightstand holds a book for cliff lowering. We refuse cliffhangers at lights out. A carafe so you don't stage a water expedition. A tray small altar for hot pillow and lavender sachet. The barley and garden duo remain star employees and a notepad that catches ideas before they perform unauthorized parkour on your thoughts. The underbed monster, now director of night operations, appreciates an uncluttered job site. Dirty laundry belongs in its corral, not flapping like ghosts at ankle height. Even walls get a say. Calmer colors at eye level invite breath to flow toward them. Busy art moves to daytime rooms where it can argue with coffee. If you decorate, you repeat our callback motif constellations in soft ink hello lost sock. You lovable myth, a daisy wheel pattern that honors old apotropaic sunbursts without carving beams. Maybe a framed stick chart that remembers Section 5's ocean lessons. Meaningful, but not loud. Your vagus nerve likes quiet company. Temperature, your body's night switch from Section 3, needs a house that cooperates. Light bedding for summer layers for winter breathable fibers all year. A ceiling fan that remembers it has a winter direction to push warm air down gently. Windows crack open when the street is calm. Sound machines or that trusty fan take over when the city wants to audition for percussion. You keep plants, but not a jungle. Oxygen is cute pollen, less so. The room learns its role fewer, surprises more kindness. History keeps mailing you blueprints with love notes. Sleeping porches fade when HVAC arrives, then make a comeback as people rediscover night air. Shutters, once closed like eyelids, and still do in old quarters that understand the moon. The giant communal bed shrinks to a queen with a dog diagonally across it. The canopy loses tassels and keeps purpose. Historians still argue whether electrification changed sleep architecture more than central heating did, or whether the real revolution was privacy corridors, splitting great rooms into nests. Your body votes for any design that lets melatonin show up to work, allows oxytocin to clock in, and gives the hippocampus clean footage. Don't forget the travel kit version. A good house for sleep becomes a backpack you carry, eye mask, portable blackout curtain, earplugs, pocket fan, a scarf that smells like home DIY lavender, a short script you can murmur in a strange room, so your amygdala recognizes the ritual and stops peeking under hotel chairs for hyenas. Joke 3, you once MacGyver a canopy out of a towel and 2 coat hangers. It looks ridiculous and works perfectly because belief is half of architecture. You stand at your doorway, our lineman, our favorite edge, and admire the ensemble. The bed is a room within a room. The room is a hand that knows how to hold. The house is a story that agrees to lower the cliff with you every night. The fan keeps the sea right where you left it. The salt line shines like a runway for dreams. The iron scissors, symbolic friendly stamp tonight's permit with a tiny snip. You slide under the top sheet, pull the duvet, yours, theirs, or both, up to your collarbone and feel the design do its invisible work as the story begins to pull you the last few quiet inches towards sleep. You lay out tonight's ingredients like a calm cook, a room with edges kindly marked the salt line, tidy at the threshold, the fan keeping its inland ocean, the honorary scissors under the pillow, winking in the imagination, and a plot that knows it's going to bed on time. You've learned the moves by now. Begin narrow pace with breath repeat, a friendly refrain. Lower the cliff land softly. Joke 1, your inner film director shows up in slippers and says the script requires fewer explosions and more naps, then promptly falls asleep on the craft services table. Start with scale. A bedtime story works best inside a manageable world. You pick a setting that fits in 2 hands, a harbor at dusk, a garden after rain, a little train circling a room the size of a rug. If you feel ambition, tug you nod and choose a smaller ambition. The hyena from our Hearth chapter gets a cameo, but only as a printed silhouette on the Zoo map, not a live guest, because we endorse cliff lowering, not cliffhanging. The lost sock constellation appears in the sky above the dresser. It's smiling. Its adventure is over for tonight. Pacing next. You let sentences lengthen until they match the exhale you discovered back in lullaby country. Paragraphs arrive like small waves and leave like smaller ones. You hide breath cues inside the scenery. The tide comes in for 4 slow heartbeats, stays for a generous 7 slips out for a drowsy 8, and somehow your chest follows as if taught by wind. The vagus nerve, ever our diplomat, signs the treaty again. Words like hush, drift soniftanen, and over become tiny weights you place on the corners of a blanket so it doesn't flap. Then structure, beginning a kind desire. Find the boat, tuck the garden, count the lights along the jetty. Middle a path of easy tasks. 1, 2, 3 each, with a miniature payoff that nods toward the hippocampus and says, here's clean footage for replay later. End closure without fireworks. A door that clicks without locking a lamp that goes from low to lower. You make the stakes polite. The dragon yawns and folds its wings. The lighthouse blinks and you blink back. The fox with the red scarf curls on a chair by the salt line, fully accounted for. A mainstream historical fact lights your desk. The tales we call 1001 Nights reached European readers through Antoine Galland's French translations, beginning in 1704, framing Scheherazade's survival with cliffhangers that stretch till dawn. The device is brilliant for postponing execution. It's less ideal for postponing sleep. You borrow the frame, then invert it. Each episode tonight resolves a little earlier than the last, so adrenaline never argues with melatonin. Historians still argue whether the distinct bedtime story as a child-centered genre really bloomed in Victorian domesticity, or simply renamed much older fireside practice, your couch, which has hosted both fairy tales and tax season pep talks, grins and says, old wine, new mugs, same yawn. Ritual glues the pieces. You pick a phrase to stamp the top of each page like a quiet passport. On a night like this, or the harbor breathes in, or we count only to 3. Refrains give prediction, something to hold, so vigilance can nap. You assign a small gesture to a fingertip circle on the back at each refrain, or a page turn synchronized with your long exhale. The body learns the choreography and cues the mind to follow. Joke 2. Your plot earns a bedtime earlier than yours and proudly puts itself to sleep at paragraph 9. Language is furniture. You choose rounded edges, Anglo-Saxon monosyllables. Soft hush, warm dim pad the room. While Latinate tassels, somnolent, mellifluous, come in sparingly like cousins visiting for tea. Verbs slow to present continuous waves are moving. Windows are closing. Soup is cooling, so the mind sees motion with no urge to chase it. You keep metaphors literal, adjacent. Blankets become beaches, the fan becomes tide, the canopy makes a tent in which the story can pitch its whisper. You install off-ramps for busy thoughts. A notepad waits on the nightstand to trap the moths that flap toward your lamp. Email plumber. Bring scarf to chair. You promise those moths tomorrow's porch light, and they relax. Inside the narrative, you float little inventories that act like counted beads. 3 boats in the harbor, 2 gulls, 1 bell. Inventories are lullabies with nouns. Quirky tidbit drifts in on a lettuce leaf. 19th century pharmacists sold lacticarium, the milky sap of lettuce, as a gentle soporific nicknamed lettuce opium. Results varied. Salads were pleased with the publicity. You don't need tinctures tonight. You've got hop and lavender on the job, unionized, punctual, and smelling faintly of fields at noon. You tune sound design on purpose. Sibilants soften wind. M's and N's make quilts. Plosives are rationed like fireworks permits in a drought. If you must use a sharper consonant for flavor, you put it in the middle of a sentence wrapped in wool. The fan keeps its approved loop steady as chant. If you add audio, you choose a voice that respects bedtime's exit strategy. No cliffhangers, no breaking news. Just the long shoreline walk from Section 12, where almost nothing happens. And that's the point. Characters follow house rules. They are competent at small tasks and very sleepy. If a problem appears, it's sized for dusk, a ribbon to untangle a lamp to cover our curfew. Bel cousin, a herb garden, to water with 3 ladles while the moon counts with you. No villains audition tonight. Even the underbed director of night operations is on break reading a very short newspaper with very small print. The hyena's laugh is a prop that stays in the theater closet, tagged and smiling. You build a micromap the way sailors build stick charts. Landmarks are soft, the chair by the door, the window with the friendly draft, the corner where the plush union keeps minutes. You travel this map once, then again slower, then one last time with words missing, so silence can finish the sentence. That silence is the harbor. You are already moored. Because you are modern, you schedule the length 8 to 12 minutes for an adult, 5 to 8 for a child, shorter if eyes glass over. You set a goodnight cadence that declines in volume like streetlights, switching off 1 block at a time. You keep your face relaxed. You let your jaw be a hammock. You let that little forehead fret unwind. Joke 3 your eyebrows clock out early and leave an away message. Back at breakfast. For emergencies, consult the fan. Slip in one last callback braid. The daisy wheel, sun scratched in old beams, reappears as a pattern on the quilt. The stars from Section 5 hang low and domestic. The fable turtle from Section 6 patrols the garden path and finds nothing urgent at all. The dream crew from Section 7 wheels the replay cart into the wings, grateful for the clean cues. The prayer from Section 11 folds itself into the closing line. The house from Section 13 edits drafts and drafts out drafts. Everything cooperates. The village is off duty. Close with the smallest ceremony you own. You touch the wall, good night house. You touch the book, well done story. You breathe in for 4, rest for 7. Breathe out for 8, or for however long your body kindly allows. And you picture the harbor light, blinking once, twice, then slower, then not at all, because it's dawn somewhere else and not your problem. The scissors under the pillow, symbolic, forever punch tonight's time card. The salt line holds. The fan obeys its tide chart. Your last sentence doesn't end with a period. It ends with a soft hinge. The dream can swing through without even noticing the door. You glance back over the little road we've walked tonight and notice how neatly the footprints line up. Firelight and evolution breath and melatonin lullabies. Stars as maps, fables as glue dreams, as rehearsal doorway guardians. Bonds and oxytocin prayers and charms. Printing to podcasts, houses that help, and the craft of a story that lands like a feather instead of a symbol. The fan keeps its indoor ocean. The salt line at the threshold is clean. The scissors under the pillow, ever symbolic, ever courteous stamp tonight's final permit with a tiny snip. You asked why we tell stories before going to bed. The short answer is kindness. The long answer is everything we are. At dusk, our species invents a soft fence for attention, so bodies can stop patrolling while minds drift safely. Stories make that fence interesting. Around old hearths, tales coordinated who went where and when. Around modern lamps, they coordinate which thoughts get the last word. Evolution supplied the need. Culture built the tools and biology handles. The handoff cadence tunes breath. Breath calms heart. Calm lets melatonin clock in. Sleep turns the lights on in the repair shop. Joke 1, your mattress calls itself an essential worker and requests hazard pay for catching all the ideas you drop at 10:43 p.m. Mainstream history folds into the quilt too. In 1946, pediatrician Benjamin Spock's wildly popular Common Sense book of baby and child care urged parents to shape predictable, loving bedtime routines, practical liturgy for ordinary houses. A year later, Margaret Wise Brown's Goodnight Moon, 1947, whispered objects into rest so gently that entire generations learned to dim their rooms by naming them. Technologies shift, yet the choreography persists. Name pace close. Under the hood, nighttime stories do the clever biological things we felt in Section 3. The suprachiasmatic nucleus keeps the schedule. Melatonin rises like a faithful tide. Long exhalations massage the vagus nerve. Oxytocin, from touch and voice, lowers the inner drawbridge. The hippocampus cues the replay cart for dreams to practice kindness and skill. Bedtime narratives are not anesthesia. They're ushers with velvet ropes and very good manners. Culturally, the night wears many uniforms, and all of them fit the job lullabies that rock breath into rhythm. Constellations that double as memory palaces and navigational signage. Fables that let a fox HR manage mischief without bruising pride. Doorway creatures that mark the limit so children stay in. Printing presses and radios and feeds that at their best bottle the hush. Houses help by becoming instruments, canopies, quilts, shutters, little lamps made of tamed embers. Your room is a chorus of small engineers who all studied the same blueprint. Lower the cliff, then lower it again. Why do we still need this in a world of passwords and porch cams? Because vigilance has more channels than ever, and bedtime stories are one of the few technologies that de-escalate attention instead of bidding for it. They're ancient UX for the nervous system. Single thread, the mind, slow the scroll of breath. Give meaning a place to sit so fear doesn't pace. Whether the voice is near or borrowed the effect, is the same somebody who cares is carrying the lantern, and you can walk with your eyes half closed. Quirky tidbit with a wink to furniture and folklore. People sometimes say the phrase sleep tight comes from tightening the ropes on old rope beds so the mattress wouldn't sag. Maybe, or maybe tight just meant soundly. Historians still argue whether rope keys truly birthed the phrase, or whether we retrofitted a tidy origin story because humans love knowing where sayings tuck in at night. Either way, the impulse is identical to our salt line daisy wheels. Hot pillows and iron scissors give the mind a little action that stands for a larger hope. Zoom back to first principles. Story is rehearsal. Rehearsal is safety. Safety is permission to release control. When a tale hands you a path with gentle markers, 3 boats at the jetty, 2 gulls, 1 bell, the brain's prediction machinery can idle. When a refrain returns on schedule, your breath finds it the way a boat finds buoys in a fog. When a character solves a small problem before the last paragraph, your amygdala decides it can clock out early. The underbed director of night operations files a smug report. Incident rate 0 compliance, excellent snack drawer secured. Of course, perfection is not in the job description. Some nights, screens shout. Some nights, worries have elbows. Some nights, the hyena laugh presses its nose to the threshold. The point of ritual is not to conjure silence, but to keep a seat open for it. You light the tiny ember, you whisper. The familiar line, you count the harbor lights to 3, you shut the cover without locking the door, and you let the night finish the sentence you began. Joke 2. Your to-do list shows up with a suitcase. The monster at the door checks the reservation. I'm afraid breakfast begins at 8. What remains is the oldest answer we tell stories because we are a storytelling animal that must sleep to remain itself. Daytime runs on plans. Nighttime runs on trust. Stories are how trust speaks in the dark softly, with gentle facts and small charms that nod to ancestors who also wanted tomorrow. Scholars still argue whether the evolutionary payoff of narrative lives, mainly in teaching bonding mate choice signals or coalition management. The house smiles and says, all of the above plus bedtime. So here at the end, the village is quiet stars doing their slow work. The lost sock constellation grinning from the dresser, the plush union off duty at last, the canopy making a room inside your room, the curfew bell cousin covered with ash, safe till morning. We have tied the circle body and clock culture and craft house and hope. Now the last task is the smallest and the best. Let the story step back until it becomes a tide and let the tide take you. Joke 3 your pillow files for vacation, but only to the exact spot under your cheek. Dim the light to its gentlest ember. Set the breath on rails in 4 rest, 7 out 8, or any count your body loves. Feel the bed meet you. Feel the room keep its promise. We'll end not with a door closing, but with a porch light fading in a friendly neighborhood where everyone knows the way home. Ready? Then we'll ease into the wind down together. Slow down now like snow through lamplight, each flake choosing an easy place to land. The room knows its job. The fan keeps the shoreline near. The curtains make a softer night. The little watch on the table decides not to count so quickly. You have done enough. The story walks you to the door and waits. Not rushing, letting quiet grow around you. Breathe in gently, a small window opening. Breathe out longer and feel the bed rise to meet you, a tide that understands your weight. Think of a harbor you trust. Lights low over water ropes, easy on their posts, a boat that floats without being told. Think of a garden after rain. Soil relaxing leaves, rinsed clean paths, remembering where they go without needing your feet yet. Think of a window with a draft and a chair beside it. Your scarf there, your name folded into the room. Everything stays. Let your eyelids grow heavy. Let your mouth soften. Tongue loose forehead, smooth shoulders, settling closer to the mattress so gravity can hold them. If a thought wanders in, let it sit, then watch it find a coat and leave by the door you marked with kindness. If the night brings a dream, let it be a rehearsal for a morning that will meet you. There is breath and a house that remembers how to keep you. You are inside the circle and the circle holds. The fan keeps its ocean. The lamp is a tamed ember. The blankets learn your shape and keep the lesson. Your jaw releases the last hinge. The room fades like a shoreline into mist. The mist opens like a gate that leads to sleep. Good night. Drift. Float. Rest. Be kept. Be well.